Yep, they tried to cancel it. They tried to make it, people on the internet think like there's people who still think that rainbow didn't happen in 2020
Yeah.
because Facebook told them that it was, that sort of thing. But there were 500 or 600 of us out there in the woods, and it was by far the best one I'd been to in years. There was so much. It was just such a good vibe, like so little violence or aggression at all. The cops never came through. The law enforcement left us
Yeah.
alone. There wasn't even dog fights. There was just like fresh mountain water like shooting out of the mountainside. Like,
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 194. I am talking to Kenny Palurintano. He is a chef, a longtime agorist, anarchist, more involved with the hippie anarchist types. He goes to Rainbow Gathering, but he's also been to the Jackalope Festival and Anarcho-Polko, and he's definitely been involved with the crypto community for a while as well. We're going to talk about a few different things here, mainly crypto, coronavirus, and travel and things like that. How are you, Kenny?
Hey, I'm doing well, Chris. I'm doing well.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on. It's good to see you.
Yeah. When did your anarchist journey begin?
I mean, realistically, since I was a kid, I was very, anti-authoritarian. I got kicked out of a lot of schools. I got kicked out of a lot of summer camps. I got in trouble a lot. And, as I grew up, there was always that edge of like, I drove over the speed limit when I drove all the time. Like, I kind of got into dealing drugs mostly just because it was something you weren't allowed to do. Like, there was some of that in terms of like where a more constructive and like having a philosophy behind it and stuff was my mid-20s. A huge dose of psychedelics sort of shattered my old reality, and I had to rebuild from the ground up. And that's when I got involved in the philosophy and understanding economics and world history and the major players involved in a lot of this stuff. And
kicked out of schools, kicked out of summer camps. If you mind asking, when would this? And I assume these had to be private schools because they can't kick you out of the public schools. But
no, I mean, I got suspended and expelled from public schools. It was all public schools.
Yeah. When was this about?
In the 90s mostly.
Okay, and that would have been where to, if you don't mind, or is one location?
The Northwest, Oregon, Washington. Yeah,
the Northwest. So your parents obviously were. Your parents probably were going nuts with that, I suppose. Was it?
Yeah. It was definitely always an issue. But my parents were really young, and
Was it for just, not, was it really for, I hope it wasn't for anything serious. If it was just, you were just being yourself though, just being the black sheep, because that can get you kicked out if you're.
Yeah, at least to start, as the teachers in the system clamp down more, you kind of lash out and stuff. So I like destroyed electronics. I like wiped hard drives on school computers and stuff. Like I would, like they, like basically like get back at them kind of thing, because they're like, making me sit outside the class for 20 minutes and, like time out basically in class. So it's like, okay, well, when you go to pee in a minute, I'm going to hard reset your computer. Like,
oh, wow.
That was like fourth grade or something.
So you were doing tech stuff kind of, you were maybe, did you get involved with hackers or anything but like that when you were a teen, or do anything interesting?
Not really. Not really. I like read stuff, read some manifestos and that sort of thing, and watched some documentaries and stuff. But no, but I was more on like the hardware side of things. My grandpa on one side was an old Air Force engineer, blueprint drawing guy, like really deep into that stuff. So he had a computer early and was always upgrading and buying new parts and stuff. Yeah. And I built my first one when I was 11, I think.
So you went out and bought a board and bought a box and bought a and building your own PC at 11. Yeah, that's an interest. Yeah, that's a fun thing to do.
Yeah. Earlier I would like take apart the broken VCRs and stuff like that, and like once I take it apart and just see if I could put it back together, and yeah, definitely I had been deeply into the hardware, just playing with electronics and computers for a long time.
But that can set you up for working in the industry. They find out maybe you get they might. I talked to one guy who owned a shop once. Granted, this was a long time ago, but his 9-year-old girl went and took the test and got certified to work on Packard bells. And it's not like they don't ask your age on this thing. They just
Right?
say anybody can go take the test. But I do think that's one beautiful thing about certification is there's no artificial barrier to it. So if a 9-year-old can do the work, then let the 9-year-old do the work. And this is an area too where I would have no problem just completely scrapping child labor laws. I would love to see kids, be able to work on, if they wanted to work on that kind of stuff, they could work on that,
Yeah. When it's something that already exists too, I mean, there's all sorts of big companies and government agencies that end up taking on young like prodigies. There's all like it's one of those things. There's always workarounds anyways. So it's like the rules don't apply all the time. Why bother having the rule, even if we assumed that they had the right to enforce it?
I do remember back in the 90s, there was some danger involved if you ever worked on monitors. You could get lethal discharges for monitors, but there really wasn't much. You really couldn't do that much if you were working on a computer or working on a printer. I mean, you might get a little shock, but you wouldn't. There wasn't anything that could put you into the hospital or anything like that. So
yeah,
and that's the one thing I would be concerned about. It's of course they run a lot hotter now too, and you definitely learn some lessons, and so but then somehow you what book, any books or people that in particular that influenced you back then?
I think the early stuff I didn't even realize it was happening until later. But I grew up reading science fiction and fantasy like voraciously. So I read dozens and dozens of Robert Heinlein books, and Ursula Le Guin, and all of Tolkien's work, and these people who were all pretty dang libertarian or outright anarchist, and I identified that way. And so there was definitely Michael Moorcock and Ian Banks. I mean, just so many that a lot of that was built into my mythology, because my family, no parts of my family were ever really religious, so I didn't get that programming. And so that meta cosmology came from mostly this just kind of a loose idea of like, the human mind can create any reality we want. Like I've lived through realities that aren't real. They were just on paper, but like I experienced them, so who knows? It was kind of a baseline.
Not necessarily a libertarian or a science fiction story, but what do you think of the movie War Games?
Oh, so good.
I still think it's probably the classic hacking movie, although it's so dated now. I mean, he's got a dial-up modem with that acoustic coupler and all. But it really. I think one thing too is it demonstrated hacking kind of in a way that almost anybody could understand it. And I was 12 or 13 years old at the time, so I was just old enough to think that movie was so. To get it, but I was still young enough to think that movie was just so cool. I think that's always going to be Matthew Broderick's signature role. The whole thing about just getting into you never did anything close to that, or you never got any place you weren't supposed to get, I guess, or
no. I mean, I got on Napster when it was brand new, and then when they shut Napster down, I was on Kazaa and LimeWire and BearShare and WinMX and all these others. I always hung out in that end of things of piracy is copying, it's not theft. Like it can't be theft if the person still has the thing after you take a copy of it. It's a different thing. We can talk about what it is, but it's definitely a different thing. Yeah. So that was
Well,
always.
it's not, you know, it's not the same as going up and putting a gun to somebody's head. You know, it's there's definitely, you know, uh, there's always been. I mean, yeah, so, music, but yeah, that's I figured you probably would have gotten into something like that. I wasn't shocked. That
Yeah.
seemed to be something. And yeah, sometimes I think you know that's not really that's not hacking. That's piracy. But you know, there's also the figuring out ways to get around these limitations, and sometimes they figure out ways just to I remember signing up for HBO to get watch the Anarchist series, and then I traveled and says, oh, why can't I get on HBO here? I paid for this. It's they put these artificial barriers, and people would buy. I remember the Buffy the Vampire Slayer DVDs came out in England before they came out in America, so people were buying the.
Oh yeah, so they're in
DVDs.
PAL.
Oh, my DVDs don't play because of the region.
Yeah,
they put all this stuff on there that makes it harder for you to use what you pay for, but but it's content creators got to make a living too. You don't just want them to give their stuff away, but it's there's a lot of ethical dilemmas here. It's a really an interesting debate that's coming up among libertarians, and also just whether or not piracy actually hurts you or helps you. It's a
I mean, one of my big influences when I started, because he wasn't crazy back then, was Stefan Molyneux, back when he was still an anarchist, back when he was still he was talking about first principles all the time and stuff, and that was his model was put it all out for free and give them lots of ways to donate. So like he put his books and his podcasts up on Pirate Bay as well as on all the different platforms, and then just had the website where you could go donate and you could buy physical copies of the books and et cetera, et cetera. And so that was really, and not that that's original in any way, but seeing it work for him definitely helped me take that model. And all the content I've ever done is all free, and then I've just I've always had little affiliate links, or for years I was on the Steam and then Hive blockchain when that hard forked, and so it was just you got paid in crypto for your upvotes on your content. So it's like everybody put out their content for free and nobody had to pay for any of it, but the system was paying people based on how much attention they were getting.
And Red Hat, like Red Hat software, they have that model of said, well, we'll give you the server, we'll give you the software, but then you'll buy a service contract from us.
Yeah.
which is what business really wants, because that's where the money is anyway. But they get you in the door by giving you the software. It's it's been an interesting way to watch how things are. So you got into cryptocurrency at a fairly early time too, didn't you? I mean, when did you first get into Bitcoin?
I first got into Bitcoin in 2013. And at first, I mostly just got some and spent it, and got some and spent it. I wasn't diving deep at all. In 2016 is when I went from I'd lived without money for a full year, and then in 2016, actually a friend took an interview that we had done at Anarchapulco earlier that year, and he put it up on the Steam blockchain, and he sent me a text that was like, "Yo, our interview made $90 in crypto. How can I send it to you?" And that's when I got into I just dove into a bunch of it, and I've been full crypto, like 100% crypto ever since. So about eight years now.
And did you start going to Anarchapulco from the beginning?
Yeah. I was at the first 5 of them.
Yeah, that was 2015, right?
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, it was
really
actually
small.
Yeah, that's one thing. A lot of the people told me they were disappointed that it got so big. It just seemed like it was more intimate. I guess it was maybe like 100 people in 2015.
Yeah.
Who was there back then?
Actually, a lot of, Ernie Hancock, Dana Martin, Kurt Robinson, James Corbett, Benny Wills, Tatiana Moroz, Angel Clark. A lot of the people that were like speakers for the next handful of years and stuff.
Okay.
Nathan and Lisa Freeman, Juan Galt, Orion Martin. A ton of it was very intimate, and it was like almost everyone there had already been, actively in the movement for a good while and doing stuff. It was people doing stuff. There was very little tourism, like go pretend you're a freedom fighter for the weekend kind of thing.
From what I've heard too, though, a lot of the people were part of part of Kokesh's email list or something like that. Is that right? Adam Kokesh was there. I mean,
I don't think Adam was there the first year.
Okay, but
Mate, I don't know, because I didn't meet him until the year after that, and I was already a fan of his work.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
Maybe the email list thing was true, but I don't remember. I definitely didn't meet him there.
I guess what I'm saying is that apparently he brought in a lot of people that made it as big as it was. Maybe that was later, but
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I know he came the third and fourth. He came the third year for sure. 2017 when we were at the Mundo Imperial.
I didn't make it there until 2018, unfortunately, which seems like it was kind of its peak.
Yep. That was the last year that Nathan ran it. The last really good year that it was crushing.
And Derek Brose was involved, and Adam Kokesh was involved. Luke Rudkowski was involved, and some other people were involved. It was a very that was a very interesting. And that was when people like now she's Miranda Webb started coming, and then they kind of started breaking off. And I have to say that based on my experience at that conference, I at least thought, this might be a community where I'd want to stay in after going there. I just realized, no, this isn't going to be my community. It's you want to have a community when you go abroad, but And of course, as some people pointed out too, they actually did have it in Acapulco the first few years. Really, they didn't have it in Acapulco later. They moved more out to Bonfil, which is kind of a suburb.
Yeah,
but closer to the airport.
True. Yeah, right next to the airport. The first 2 years were in the Bay in Acapulco proper, and then every year after that has been either in Diamante or in Bonfil. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Anarchapulco last year again, and I actually just kind of blew it off for a day because I'd never actually been in Acapulco, and I just thought, okay, go to visit Acapulco, visit some of these hotels. It really is an amazingly beautiful place. I understand now why it was once so popular with some of the people, 60 or 70 years ago. It's unfortunate that its star has fallen the way it has, but obviously the crime issue has been a part of that.
I'm guessing the hurricane is going to lead to a lot of new money being spent to like rebuild a lot of stuff there, because there is so much wealth from Mexico City that comes out for the holidays. Like they own all condos there and stuff, and they just come out for weekends. I've been there when it happens at Christmas time, and like the 600,000 people in the city, suddenly there's 1.5 million more people from Mexico City that are there for 2 weeks. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing now is the Acapulco is now really, it has become a destination for Mexicans.
Yep.
And of course, Mexicans, and it's not that, I suppose they probably just drive, the Mexico City, they probably just drive down because it's only it is about 75 minutes by plane. But if you've got 4 or 5 kids with you, you just get in the car and go. It's that's one thing. When I was in the Princess Hotel, that was one thing I noticed. The rooms in that hotel were humongous. Yeah. And I wonder if maybe that was wise, because if you're a mom and dad and you get one room, you got 2 double beds, but you got all this space and all the floor. You could bring in little pads on the floor. You could actually, maybe have a mom and dad and 6 kids in one room. They'd have to sleep on the floor or get creative, but you could actually do it in a room because those rooms were so big.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, I certainly hope Acapulco does recover. I mean that, and it's unfortunate that got almost no coverage in the States, but that was an awful hurricane. Went from a Cat 1 to a Cat 5 almost overnight. It just so nobody was prepared for it.
Yeah. Well, and they don't really get hit with hurricanes on that side. Like, so rare that it happens at all, and definitely not Category 5s.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so but you kind of you stopped going. Do you want to talk about why you no longer associate with Anarchapulco? I mean, you and some other people.
I'll just go. I don't want to go too, spend too much time on it. But there was always. I always had a little bit of an issue with supporting Jeff Berwick, just kind of tacitly, because it was his event in the sense that he the bank accounts in his name kind of thing. and his face is the one that kind of draws people to it. And I've seen enough evidence to be convinced that he's a serial scammer of people.
Yeah.
And there's from Bit Club being the biggest one, and he wasn't the guy running it, but he was one of the biggest promoters. And then after it went down, he just deleted all of the old posts. He never just made it look like he wasn't a supporter. And that's kind of the pattern. And so I was always like, that was always an issue for me. That's why I was a part of Anarcha-Forco as well when John and Lily did that. And that's why I was, yeah. And then in 2019, Nathan Freeman stepped away, who had run it for the previous few years. And when Jeff brought in Jessica Kill, and things went really sideways, and she tried to make all the speakers pay for tickets to the event. She was telling the speakers that we weren't allowed to, she tried to tell Derek that he couldn't sell his books and his shirts that he had brought with him. Anywhere on the grounds. There was just so much of this stuff, and it wasn't targeted at any one person. It was just broad sweeping, making it a weird corporate thing. And since then, it's Nathan was what made it great for me. It's always the people at any event, but Nathan really balanced that, keeping it organized and having centralization so that things run smoothly, but whatever people wanted to bring could be folded in. And if you couldn't afford a ticket, if you showed up, you were allowed in, and very holding both sides. And I feel like it definitely, it doesn't seem to have that anymore.
I always felt, and it's still that way, where just everything is just so disorganized. I mean, if you put out a schedule, stick to the schedule. Don't. And I realize you have things that come up, they had one case where one of the speakers couldn't get into Mexico, but I realize stuff comes up, but it seems like some of those people almost seem to think being disorganized is some kind of virtue. And I don't buy into that, but yeah. So what but that's also, I will admit, Anarcha-Polka has also kind of been a crypto conference. What's your observations based on what you've seen from the crypto community lately? I know Roger Ver was there, and
it was kind of a good mix back in the day too, of kind of the really, some Monero people there, really devs they're just building, and then also tons of scammers pushing little ponds and stuff. And that's what I see happening in crypto right now, is there's these different segments. There's more than there used to be. There's the dark fight, there's the lunar punks, there's the the Monero side of thing, all the privacy people, the people that are in it for the very cypherpunk, we want to be able to get away from the CBDC. It's not about number go up, it's about, there's that group, and that's where I try to direct people when I'm teaching people about crypto, is the focus is on, here's how to hold your own keys, how to be private with your transactions, how to use VPNs, how to and then later we can talk about how to do DeFi and gamble if you want to do that. But first, you need to learn how to use government-free money. So there's those people, and then now there's Bitcoin maxis, or it's this whole own little tribe that is kind of eating itself in some ways, it seems like, or it's dividing again now. There was the divide back in the day between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and then Bitcoin's SV kind of took a little bit from both. But now it's even people who are just pure Bitcoin maxis, BTC maxis, are sort of splitting, because some want to go even more in bed with the banks and even more in bed with the governments, where others still thought that Bitcoin wasn't doing that. And they're just now waking up to what happened in 2017 with the hard fork and the push for off-chain answers like Lightning and everything. And then most of the people now, most of the actual number of people in the space are just playing with fucking meme coins and stuff, right? It's it's Politify, it's Celebrity-Fi or whatever, and then it's just random ass cats and dogs and frogs and stuff. And
I wonder also, just you've heard different stories, about how that it's actually it's gotten kind of expensive to use Bitcoin on the chain. You almost have to use other things like Monero. Were there any Were there any Litecoin or Ethereum or any Cardano people like there, or was that? Because I know you definitely had Roger Ver there, so you obviously had some Bitcoin Cash people, and certainly Dash has been involved, and Dash
there
is
was
just
definitely
Dash.
Yeah, there was definitely a bunch of Dash people back in the day. There was some Ethereum folks for sure. I don't remember if there was anybody Litecoin specific that I ran into. Steam, when it was active, because it had such an anarchist thing, like one year, 17, maybe 18, shit, I don't know. One of those years, I did an interview series of like just people who had Steam, who were on Steam putting out content that were at the conference, and I did 44 interviews with different people who were all using Steam. That's a massive percentage of like a 1,200 person conference.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who are open to trying new things and aren't really tied down. Like at the time, Juan Galt was like deep in Komodo for a few years there. He was a node runner on Komodo. Yeah, which is what Pirate Chain runs on, is Komodo.
Okay.
He was really involved in that back in the day. Now he's a full maxi at this point, pretty much.
I've not heard of Komodo. And by the way, just to clarify, Steam is spelled STEEM. And it's also was known as Steemit, which was a Steemit.com. Is Steam still around, or is it kind of not really? It was big there for a while, but it was because to their credit, a lot of the people in the anarcho-polko community, even back in 2017 and 2018, were starting to see that big tech was and is an enemy. Some of those people got caught up in the great Facebook purge of 2018. Carrie Wedler also was involved there. She would go there with the anti-media. So we've had a lot of. That's one thing I think the anarcho-polka community, probably out of all the libertarian communities I'm with, was very distrustful of big tech, even from back then. It's and of course now we've seen what's happened since then. It was it's really changed.
Well, and now we still go to Mexico every year, a bunch of us, and obviously a bunch of people live there. And now we do the Greater Reset in Morelia, Mexico, and so Derek Bros and Hakeem over at Above Phone are kind of the main organizers of that. And it's the same crowd, Catherine Austin Fitz and Sterling and Carrie sometimes, David Rodriguez, Dan. A lot of the folks that stopped going to Anarcho-Polko after 2019 or before that, even when 2019 we could tell was going sideways. Some people just pulled the ripcord earlier. But we still go there, and that one's got similar vibe. It's not a tourist town at all, which is nice. And what I love about it is that they make it really open to the locals. So there's like headphones that anybody can go and check out a pair of headphones, and they have a live translating team the whole time. So people can sit and listen in Spanish, or on the live stream they can listen to the Spanish version, and it's free for Mexicans to get in.
Yeah,
where
that's
Anarcho-Polko
awesome.
was like way too expensive for anybody to come in if they were actually from Mexico, unless they were like super, super wealthy. It was like years worth of income for some people just to get a ticket.
Yeah, that's awesome. I went to a Cato event, and they had the same thing. They had a set of headsets where you could get English or get Spanish, because of course Mile was one of their. And when I went to the World Ayahuasca Conference in 2018, they had these headsets, and it was actually English, Spanish, and Portuguese, which was cool. So it's definitely made that interesting. You had to usually give in those headsets. It's doing the live translations. The Greater Reset sounds like an interesting event. I've not been to it. And Morelia's one thing is Morelia. One thing, some of these places aren't that easy to get to. I know Anarcho-Polko or Acapulco doesn't really have many flights to any. Usually the best way to go to Acapulco is just to fly to Mexico City and then go from there. You can't really get a flight. I mean, you can fly to a lot of Mexican cities from at least one American airline hub, but Acapulco doesn't really have that many flights to America.
It was always a headache getting to and from, for sure.
well, since I live in Austin, I would usually just go down to San Antonio and since San Antonio had more flights to Mexico City, I just go in and out of there. So, which was about an hour away, but no big deal, yeah. So and I don't know about Morelia, but it's kind of out of the way too. But yeah, it sounds like
yeah. I mean, it's only a couple hour by car or drive from Mexico City. So the flights are super, super short if you have to do that. But then they do have direct from a couple cities in the US, like 3, I think.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to look that up. These things change all the time,
Yeah. I usually just go into Mexico and fly from Tijuana, or there's like a caravan that goes down from Houston every year, and I've flown to or gotten to Houston and then gone down with them before too.
Oh, really? Yeah, they just kind of get in cars or what? Yeah.
A few cars, and they stop at this one like gated up hotel halfway. It just takes 2 days to get there, or like a day and then a short day.
I've not driven in Mexico yet. I wonder if I should change that sometime.
It's fun. It's different. You know what I mean? It's fun. If you stayed at the toll roads, it's pretty safe, and like the roads are really good. If you try to drive on the free ones, that's where you tend to get pulled over by cops and fake cops, and the roads are just really shitty.
Yeah, and how do you tell the fake cops from the real cops? That's the next question. You don't want to.
They all have guns, and they all just want to bribe. So
yeah.
I think you don't really gamble most of the time.
And from what I heard, 20 pesos is enough.
Yeah, they don't need much.
This is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. This is not, immigration advice or tax advice. But yeah, I mean, if you can, I mean, yeah, you 20 pesos. You're looking about, you basically just give a cop $1 and he goes away. I mean, that's kind of amazing when you think about it. Mexico definitely. Yeah. And Mexico certainly has a lot of other things I like about Mexico. Just the food, and I'm always amazed too at all the micro businesses I see in Mexico. Just like little businesses that you could maybe start for $1,000 or $2,000, and it's like everybody in Mexico seems to have a little business of some type.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and a lot of it's off books. A lot of it's everybody's got side hustles. Everybody's kids have little side hustles that they're on. People don't pay much taxes in Mexico. That's for sure.
It's still very much a cash society. I mean, you'll definitely definitely get pesos in Mexico, because if you go to some little taco stand, that might be all they take. I mean, don't just think you can walk in with a credit card and they'll take that. I mean, and I don't know. I suppose if you have American dollars, they'll probably take those. But but try to always get local money when you travel, because you never know what's going to happen. Just be prepared.
Yeah, you'll always get a better deal if you have the local than if you're paying. A lot of places will take the American, but they won't give you the actual exchange rate. Yeah. Well, and down in Mexico, they actually have the tumen. It's a local currency that Danny Sesam's been helping make a digital version to. I forget which chain it's based on, but they have their own little blockchain for it too. And they've got like 14 or 15 different villages that use the tumen, and they've got like some big Mexico, like the people there definitely just kind of inherently seem to have a little bit more of the libertarian, maybe not philosophy per se, but just way of living. Like they're naturally more agorist. Like they just don't depend on the system as much. Just by the default of the system doesn't take care of as much stuff for them down there.
Yeah, what I just thought of, Danny, is part of their plan for world domination. OXO coin.
There we go.
Since OXO is everywhere in Mexico, I mean, I tell people, people talk about Amazon or whoever. I said, no, this is the company that's planning for world domination. I mean, they're what? I mean, you can't walk a half mile in Mexico and not run into an OXO. It's just,
they're everywhere.
Just these little convenience stores like 7-Eleven, but also it's usually places where you can pay a utility bill and, get and pay, do other things like that. But they're just little
you can get Bitcoin. You can get crypto out of it. You can go put pesos in and get a little voucher to claim some crypto.
But that is an idea, yes. OXO coin.
Yeah.
And it's got a nice ring to it, Yeah. So anyway, Danny, you've been involved with some other communities. I mean, you've been pretty regular at, for example, at the Rainbow Gathering. I haven't anybody talk about Rainbow Gathering. When did you start going to Rainbow?
2015 as well, actually. Same as Anarchapulco. That was when I the Rainbow Gathering was when I left, quit my job, gave up my house, and moved into a backpack and just living on the road. Was
So
going to the Rainbow Gathering and just seeing what happened from there.
You've been living on the road ever since, sounds like?
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
But
you said you worked as a chef for a while, though.
I mean, that's my main thing. And I've never done it for a company, but I've been a chef since. I cook at Rainbow every year. I cooked at a bunch of different festivals and conferences. That's how I came to Anarchapulco a few of those years. And Nathan and Lisa brought me down to be their private chef for like 3 months when she was pregnant. The last couple months of her pregnancy with Ira Bell.
Oh wow,
yeah. I was just cooking for the Exit and Build Land Summit over in Texas a few weeks ago. Yeah, that's my main like flow state, just way to easily give back and get it. People want ways to connect and to bring people out to their events, but when you're just like, oh, I'm down to do whatever, it's it's easiest to be like, I'm a chef, you can I'll cook for stuff, but I can also do whatever. We can talk about whatever. I can help with whatever.
I've not been to Rainbow, but I know people who go to Rainbow pretty regular. That's more of it's really true, more of the hippie anarchist type. Wouldn't you describe it as that? I mean, there's
yeah.
I mean, as you pointed out, Rainbow Gathering was also one of the few events that still went on in spite of pandemic insanity.
Yep. They tried to cancel it. They tried to make it, people on the internet think like there's people who still think that Rainbow didn't happen in 2020 because Facebook told them that it was, that sort of thing. But there were 500 or 600 of us out there in the woods, and it was by far the best one I'd been to in years. There was so much, it was just such a good vibe, like so little violence or aggression at all. The cops never came through. The law enforcement left us alone. There wasn't even dog fights. There was just like fresh mountain water like shooting out of the mountainside. Like it was really magical.
What's the attendance at Rainbow usually, Ben?
It's wildly different every year. The last one I was at, I missed the last two. In 2022, it was like almost 25,000 people.
In 2019, what was it in 2019? I mean, how did
2019 would have been Wisconsin? There's like 4K, like 3,500, 4,000. Okay. But the part of it is it's in a different national forest in a different state every year, and so the West Coast ones get bigger attendance. And then it all depends where it's at, and then what's happening in the world too. Obviously, even if it you'll never stop Rainbow from happening, but you might stop a lot of people from coming.
So. Yeah, but if you when you move around, you might get a crowd, who maybe because it's really a camping event, so it's really an event that's much more catered to driving or taking your RV, and if you're you may drive 200 miles, but you're not going to drive 2,000 miles to go. So I can see why that would bring in different people, but obviously if you're closer to a population center too, maybe,
and that's part of that's part of it. And then there's people that come from all around the world every year too. There's people that come from outside the US every year to go to it. There's people that fly from Hawaii to the mainland every year to go, like, because it's better than any other event that happens, like conference, festival, whatever. Like there's nothing that holds a candle to Rainbow, in my opinion. And I've been to dozens and dozens of conferences, dozens and dozens of festivals. Like it's so good. Even the worst Rainbow is still so good, just because the container that you're in is everybody's living totally anarchist. Like there's no one there that's in charge. There's no one there that has a badge. There's no one there that got paid to be there. There's no one there who, you know what I mean? Like even if it's a clusterfuck in terms of the weather or there's a bunch of drama or whatever, like the actual structure of it is true free anarchy, and we're all taking care of each other. That's the beauty of it. It's like there's total, there's a rule at Rainbow: no ground scores. Like if you find something on the ground, you like hang it from a tree right there, or you take it to the nearby kitchen for, hey, somebody dropped their whatever, here it is. It's like, it's very respectful of property and of people's stuff. People respect, like, they pick up instruments and get them out of the rain, even though it's not theirs. Like all of the food that's prepared at Rainbow is just people volunteering and preparing food and giving it away to whoever shows up to eat it. All of the, you know what I mean? The healthcare, there's a camp called Calm. It's all people who are actually doctors, nurses, chiropractors, herbalists, whatever. And they all get together and they work out shifts and stuff. And they all provide medical care and just general care for anybody that needs it. And it's all free. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's true, like anarcho familyism or whatever, where it's like, yeah, we're all going to take care of each other's basics. And then whatever if people want to trade stuff, bring stuff to, whatever, if people want to do other things, they still can. There's no limitation on the market, but you're not required to give anything in order to survive. Like you're one of us. Of course, we're going to take care of you.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. And Rainbow's been happening, since the 70s, or it's an old event, the Rainbow Gathering.
Yep, since 1972.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's rainbows all around the world too. That's the thing. The big one is the 4th of July week in the US. That's the one that started in 1972. But now, Costa Rica has one every year, Guatemala has one every year, Mexico has one like every other year. Countries all around the world have them. And then Florida, Colorado, a bunch of different US states have their own small gathering every year. In the average year, there's 150 different rainbow gatherings that happen sometimes. It's during the COVID years, it was like maybe 15 or 20 at most, because a lot of them, they just couldn't pull it off. But yeah, it's a whole global distributed network of decentralized events that all run on the same ethos.
Is it almost always campers, or do you occasionally get somebody, who might, I don't know, maybe they find a hotel 20 miles away and they drive in and out because they just don't want to sleep on the ground, but they still want to contribute?
I'm sure there's people at every gathering that are like staying in the nearby town or whatever and coming out.
Some events kind of frown on that. That's why I'm asking, because
No, I mean, nobody would even know at Rainbow unless you were telling them. There's no bracelets, there's no gate or anything. There's nobody stopping people from coming in or checking you as you come in or anything. So nobody knows where you're sleeping unless you told them.
Yeah, I don't know. Are there smaller regional rainbow gatherings, or is it just pretty much the big one here in the U.S.? You mentioned the other countries, but are there any in the U.S. like that?
Yeah. Oregon and Washington kind of take turns each year. Yeah. California has one every year. Arizona has one every year. Colorado has one every year. Florida has 2 different ones every year.
Oh wow!
Yeah. There's probably a dozen at least in the U.S. Besides the Nationals, the big one.
Because that's one thing. A lot of people who aren't happy with Burning Man still will say a lot of positive things about the regional burns.
Yeah,
because there are regional burns that are usually smaller. Maybe they might be limited to 1,000 or something like that. But they've all got their own little quirks, and there really isn't an easy way. I have to say too, they're not that easy. They're not that easy to find. Do you think maybe they're purposely hard to find, or?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Rainbow historically was never even on the internet or published in any way. It's not, there is no marketing, there is nothing like that. It was purely word of mouth until Facebook, basically. And then nowadays it's mostly word of mouth still. Most of it you won't find online. You'll just find out from somebody who found out from somebody who found out from somebody who is there or whatever.
Yeah. I first learned about Rainbow because I met a EFT practitioner who she goes to Rainbow and she goes to Burning Man every year. That's always been her. In fact, I'd probably say in some ways you might call her the queen of EFT in Austin, because not only does she do EFT, but she's apparently trained a lot of the other EFT practitioners in Austin. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so regardless of whether you think EFT is useful or not, but she's doing it a long time. Yeah. So that's yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you just kind of gotta ask around and find rainbows. So and one thing, as you pointed out, there wasn't really a lot of it sounds like there's also probably a lot of what you'd call alternative health in this space, isn't there? They're more into herbal supplements, or and of course they're probably more conscious of what they eat to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, with the mix, obviously, it's a bell curve, but it has shifted. I would say, traditionally Rainbow was all vegan for a long time. Nowadays, it's not so much, but it all, like, in terms of the gathering. But many of the kitchens still stay that way, and the big family dinner. So it's like every night at 6 o'clock by the sun, because it's all by the sun. So it's like high noon and sunrise and that sort of thing. At 6 o'clock, everybody gathers for dinner, everybody that wants to, and there's kitchens that spend their whole day just preparing one big pot of food to bring down for the dinner, and that's kept vegan still. But then there's other people that, because of that, and because they want to be kind of contrarian to that, they come down and they set up like an all meat kitchen, and that's all they do is 3 times a day they grill bacon, and they just bring out like 170 pounds of bacon or whatever.
Yes.
So it's like, because it's Rainbow, it's like, yeah, the culture is this, and as long as you don't bring that into the circle where we're having this part, nobody's going to stop you. You can do, like, yeah, you're free to do what you want, as long as you're not harming others, or like threatening, or the things that that broader spectrum besides just like physical harm. But yeah, as long as you're not fucking with other people, you can do whatever you want. Sure, go eat bacon all day, whatever. Like,
thank you, because I'll never be a vegetarian. That definitely makes me more interested in going. It's because I don't know. I tried it for about 2 weeks, and I just about went nuts after 2 weeks. It just definitely takes a commitment. Yeah, but that's by the way, what kind of food do you usually cook, Kenny?
Yeah, everything I do is plant-based, organic, whole food, no sugar, no gluten, no soy, no pests, nothing, like, just straight, like, stuff that people would have made hundreds or thousands of years ago. And I kind of learned a lot about some Central and South American styles, a lot of different Indian stuff. Like,
oh wow, yeah.
Anything. I mostly just make whatever's like fresh and available, or like whatever's in season where I'm at. But yeah, it's all like really clean vegan food, and my focus is usually more on like what are the properties of the stuff. Like, it's easy to make food taste good when you have herbs and you have salt and pepper and you have some good oils, and like, it's easy to make anything taste good, really. I find, and most people who have been chefs are like, yeah, you can make anything taste good if you have the stuff. And so a lot of my focus is like, how can I prepare meals that are gonna give people the best nutritional breakdown for what they need, or like give them, if it's events where there's lots of movement and stuff, it's like, what's going to give them a lot of nutrition but not bog people down. We got to be really light on the starches, we got to, and just that sort of thing. Really figuring out like food that makes people feel good after they eat is kind of the main goal.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, it's you want a food that makes people feel good after they eat. Yeah, so yeah, if you maybe open up your own place or something, start selling all that food. I don't know. It's yeah.
It'd have to be in Mexico or something where I don't have to, in the US there's so many licenses and hurdles and stuff for that sort of thing, and I'm not going to do all that.
But you know what I also find interesting, Kenny? I remember that happened a few years ago. The Mexican state of Oaxaca actually made it illegal to sell Coke and Pepsi to kids.
Yep.
And as much as I'm a libertarian, I'm not sure if I really hate that.
Right? Yeah.
Because that stuff is such poison. In some cases, it's probably worse than beer. But yeah, so
yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky sometimes when there's when they make laws that are like, it's like, okay, that we don't really need somebody with a gun forcing people to do this or not do that. But I agree, that's a thing that we probably should do or should not do. Like, it's it's tricky. because it's a win if the kids aren't drinking poison, and anytime the state gets more power is a little bit of a loss.
It's a little bit of a loss, yes. You know, is there? That is, I'm not. You're definitely making me more interested in going to Rainbow. I wonder if I should maybe. Well, unfortunately since it's July 15th, it's too late for this year. But maybe next time I'll try.
Yeah, next year should be out your direction somewhere. This year was in Northern California, and last year was in New Hampshire. So it should be somewhere like kind of in the middle / the south this year.
That's another thing. Have you been since you're getting on New Hampshire? Have you been to Pork Fest? What do you think about Pork Fest?
Yeah, I actually went for the first time this year. I've been out to the grounds before for other events, but it was interesting. It was an off year for sure, from what I understand. Yeah. There's a lot of drama amongst the Free State people and the Libertarian Party people out there. And then I guess there was a bunch of drama with the event itself. And then there was like grounds infrastructure stuff. Like the last couple of years, the grounds have run out of water and stuff. So they had already capped the number of tickets at less than previous years, and then didn't even sell out the number they had capped it at. So I guess this is the smallest one in many years now. But it was cool. And it was very conversational. There's there's the Free Talk Live, tent, and then there was the Monero Talk tent. And then there's just lots of places where people were just hanging out, having conversations. There were a couple places where there were talks where you would see up to like maybe 50 people at a time. But other than that, it didn't have the same feeling of like a fest. It was like a bunch of libertarians camped out at the same place is what it felt like.
Yeah.
There was nothing where it was like, oh, wow, everybody's here. This is a huge number of people.
I guess, how does that compare to Rainbow? Obviously you got to pay to get to Pork Fest, but is Pork Fest the kind of community though, where if, my wallet falls out of my pants, somebody finds it and I'll get my wallet back. I think that's the important thing. You want to be in a community like that where everybody, at least to a certain degree, has each other's backs. It's nice to know that you can live in a place like that.
It's really important. I feel like there's a mix. I don't know, at Pork Fest, there's definitely a mix. Like there's like people that are like that for sure, but it sounds like they have a lot of issues that they're dealing with too. Like they have the Pork Fest Rangers that are going around with, like they have security kind of on call. Like the cops were called while I was there early on in the week. Some guy pulled a machete and came at this other dude because the guy it was off in the naked area. There's like, they had like a nudity friendly end of the campground.
And this village, they called it. Yeah.
And this guy was like drunk and came out of his camper and like saw a naked dude and just flipped out and came at him. Like, so, it's, you're going to always have some that are outside of the norm, but.
Well, how do you know you didn't have somebody flip out too, just because they had bad psychedelics or something like that? There's probably psychedelic usage at a lot of these events.
Yep.
I actually applied with the Zendo project to go to Burning Man to see if I could help out with them, because they're like, because I do know something about holding space for people who have been in that situation. You've got to be there for people. It's a very, and I think you said you've been to the Jackalope Festival too in Arizona. Is that right?
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, it was just coming to mind because my first Jackalope in 2016, we had a guy who tripped out so hard that like the next day he was tripping still and getting violent, and he had to get like tackled to the ground and tied to a tree. And then, people just giving him little bits of water and stuff. And then somebody unilaterally decided that he was good enough to untie. And then it all started again. And some other dude who was freaking out because the guy was near his kids pulled his gun on him. And we had to stop that guy and take this guy back down again and tie him up again. And this was like the last couple days of the festival. And nobody had met him before. Nobody knew him. So then ultimately, like a couple people took his car and their car and like drove and dropped him at the hospital because nobody was going to take responsibility for like taking this random dude home. But yeah, so that's, you know, and that like, and Jackalope's small and mostly people that do know each other really well and all that.
Yeah.
But the guy was cool for the first like 6 days. He was chill. He was having great conversations. He was helping out with stuff. You know what I mean? Like totally normal. And then took way too much. We know he had at least a couple different psychedelics and maybe more stuff after that.
Yeah.
And it just like full psychotic break.
It's not, no, do not mess around with psychedelics like that. It's not just like you're going into a candy store where you it's not just like you go and, you take a bite of Three Musketeers, you go take a bite of Milky Way, you go take a bite of Reese Cups. I mean, you can't do that with psychedelics.
Yeah.
You do not know what is going to happen. Oh, that is so dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wild.
Yeah.
So that stuff's gonna come up.
Yeah, flip.
You know,
Jackalope's what, 100 or 200? They get a lot of bands there usually too. I've not been to.
They get a couple. Yeah, most years. I mean, 200 would be a big year for Jackalope. Most years is closer to like 90 to 100. I think the 2020 was the biggest one. There was like 300, 350 people.
Oh wow, yeah, But again, that was another event that didn't turn off because of coronavirus.
Yep.
I'm really got to give these events credit. They did. Of course, when you don't have to deal with hotels and all that other stuff, it makes it a lot easier. Glad to hear they kept going. Though there's, Kenny, you're only involved in these sections of the Liberty Movement. What do you think happened to our movement in 2020? Because there are a lot of people that I thought were really solid who completely sold out.
Yeah. There's so many pieces that were like, I feel like there was already this Trump divide that was happening since before that, since 2015 or 16. There was already people who were starting to sort of tiptoe their way back towards statism because of Trump, and the QAnon stuff and him saying he was going to go after the Fed and him blah, 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 blah. And then when the election got stolen, which it seems like it did, but it doesn't really matter. But either way, when the story is the election got stolen in 2020, that reinforced that for a lot of them even more, I feel like. So that was already this weird thing that was happening. And then, there's just too many people that still believed in the Rockefeller medicine, that still believed in the pharmaceutical industrial complex. I think, you look at like a perfect example being Luke Rudowski. Motherfucker he was living in crazy fear, wearing masks. He took a squirt gun to Pork Fest to keep people 6 feet away from him. Like he was fully on board with it for like a year. And then, meanwhile, for those of us who were, not going into fear and just keeping our eye on what was coming out, it was clear from, the Crystal Princess, that first ship, just going by, virology, like, don't have to argue against the mainstream reality. I don't care if it's terrain or if it's viruses, whatever. Either way, let's talk in their language. And it clearly showed that this thing was not going to kill very many people at all, and it didn't even spread that fast or effectively. So it's like there was no reason to be afraid from the very first data that they were releasing.
Yes.
And never mind, Event 201 being the same weekend as the World Military Games in Wuhan, being the same weekend that it leaks out of the lab. So it's like, I don't know. It was crazy. And then there's all the people that got bought into the full, like the terrain theory thing. And then that became like another flat earth, round earth argument where it's like, suddenly, if you don't believe in terrain theory, these people are just going to scream at you and derail the whole conversation about how we actually do like activism over here, or how, like communities started to get divided again. It's like the lockdowns and shit brought people together that wanted to be free. And then as that stuff happened, and some of them started following Dave Icke and some of them whatever, then it caused this false divide again.
Yes. I always like to bring up this H.L. Mencken quote, "The whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed, parenthesis, and hence clamorous to be led to safety, parenthesis, by an endless series of hobgoblins, most of them imaginary," unquote. I mean, it's I see it the same way with immigrants. I see it the same way with a lot of these alleged crises that are happening, and obviously, you had a virus that was, certainly a threat to people who were already pretty vulnerable, but so it did exist, but it was just blown out of such disproportionate and really, it's really making me ask a lot of questions just about society in general, Kenny. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do you not just be, how do you not get really angry about all this? It's,
I mean, one part, big thing for me is avoiding taking in a lot of it. I
yeah,
don't stay up to date on what's on the news or what people are.
yeah,
I don't have a feed that I'm reading and that sort of thing. So I'm not being inundated with
yeah,
things helps a lot. And I like to remember like where we were before. You know what I mean? It's like as crazy as stuff might get now. It's like a couple hundred years ago they had prima nocta and the divine right of kings, and you know what I mean. It's like things are like we have clean drinking water out of for most of the world. We have like it's such a good time to be alive, and we have so much access to everything in terms of communications and information and things like 3D printing. There where it's like I feel like if I start to get really like upset or feel bad about where we're at, it's always because I've gotten too zoomed in, and I just need to like zoom back out to like the broad patterns of not
yes,
just a few years of life, but like many generations
yes,
time. We're doing great. It looks so good where we're at right now.
yes. It's one of as the crypto guru I occasionally listen to says, he's like, say, when in doubt, zoom out.
Yeah.
Of course, he's
Yeah.
saying that about, when you're looking at charts, but, it's you sometimes go out and look at the big picture. It does make for an interesting, but, sometimes you just can't, insulate yourself from it. I mean, stuff still happens. It's,
Yeah.
you never know when obviously you still, travel. I mean, you go to a lot of different places. Obviously you go to, you're pretty well traveled. Just is that international or just nationally? I mean,
International. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
where do you usually go? What places do you really like? I mean, if you could settle down anywhere, where would you settle down?
Man, I don't know. I don't know where I would settle. Like, I don't know. I mean, right now, I spend 3 to 6 months in Mexico every year. I love it down in Guatemala, but I don't think
Yeah,
I would want to live there necessarily. It's so unstable politically and socially.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
yeah. Guatemalans, apparently they want to they just want to get to Mexico because that improves their lives. Apparently,
yeah,
it's,
yeah. But the country is beautiful, especially Lake Atitlan up in the
yeah,
mountains, and if I settle down somewhere and get land, it'll probably be realistically at this point it would be in the States somewhere because for all the issues that the States have, it's still kind of the freest in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of known ways I know the process to get a land patent for land and to get away from the property taxes that way and do all that stuff. I don't know anything about that process in other countries, and I don't even most countries I don't even know if they have anything remotely like it,
yeah.
and a lot of that. But yeah, I'm going to Europe again in September for a little while. The People's Reset in the UK, and then
Yeah.
Bitcoin Amsterdam conference and some of that stuff.
Well,
I
that's cool.
I enjoyed it out there. Last time I was in Europe, like 2022, it was really good seeing. Germany was the only place that people were still following the mandates. All the other countries that had them, everybody was ignoring them completely. In Egypt, it was like they still had federal mask mandates. People weren't even wearing them on the planes. Like even the flight attendants wouldn't put them on, but there was the announcement about how you had to wear them. Like it was so cool, so good to see.
Right.
So many people around the world just don't give a fuck what their governments say. Is the thing. Like
I, yeah, maybe I shouldn't. Yeah. Oh, Germany. Oh goodness. I just, it's funny. A couple days ago, a guy reminded me, oh, this was the anniversary of 1933 when Germany passed its state-sponsored euthanasia law. And I said, what they ought to do is they just have state-sponsored sterilization programs, just give them to everybody, and then until everybody's gone. Jeez. I mean, is there really any hope for Europe at all anymore? I don't think there. Western Europe, I don't think there is. I think Western Europe is almost completely a lost cause. It really is. I'd still like to believe in Britain and Ireland, but outside of that, just forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, watching Germany dump all that free Bitcoin definitely doesn't leave you feeling hopeful for their economy. It's oh man.
Well, the other thing, Kenny, I believe Germany is still the only country in the world where it is explicitly illegal to homeschool your kids.
Oh, wow. Wild.
And I'm just like, of course.
Right.
Thank you.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, they've got so many censorship law. I mean, so many wrongthink laws. So many.
Kenny, it's kind of I realize it's a pessimistic way to look at things, but let's imagine you spend, you've got a close family member who's been, an alcoholic for 20 years, and you spend all this time trying to get them clean and sober. Eventually, you just come to a point where it said, okay, I just hope it ends some other way, because they're never going to be clean and sober.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's awful, but because you really, I'm curious. Have you been to Argentina?
No, I haven't.
Well, you certainly have heard about what's going on down there, right? I mean,
yeah.
Doug Casey has certainly thought that Argentina was a possibility. I mean, I don't know. Have you been to any other Spanish-speaking countries besides Mexico and Guatemala?
Yeah, Costa Rica as well. But yeah, I haven't gone to South America at all yet.
Yeah. I haven't been to Costa Rica, but I'm getting the vibe that Costa Rica has almost become too American.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty Europeanized, Americanized. It's quite expensive at this point.
Yeah,
like native Costa Ricans will never own land again, basically.
I mean, you're getting to a point too. I don't like that. But you're also getting to a point where you still have all the disadvantages of living in America, and then you have the disadvantages of not living in America, and then you don't have some of the advantages that you do get from living in America. So it's like, why would I go here? I'm sad to hear that. I can imagine there'd be some. That's a build for that can really create a resentment situation too, whether it's fair or not, because you never know if the locals might just decide to revolt or something. Say, look, we're taking back all this land. Obviously, I'm not saying that's right, but this is why when I go to those places, I always treat the people in the restaurants and the hotels and the cab drivers, just treat them really well and tip them well, and just go out of your way to be nice to those people.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it, because they know I'm an American, and I'm representing Americans when I'm with them, and
yeah.
And it does take on a different attitude when you're with that. And of course, sometimes there's the language barrier.
Right. Yeah. And I know when I was just there in Costa Rica recently, I learned, because I was helping somebody out, I learned it's like one of the least crypto friendly places in the world.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like none of the banks will let you do anything connected to crypto. There's no crypto ATM. Like there's a Lightning Network wallet that's starting to be used in like one of the states. Like people are starting, like communities starting to spread it and stuff. But outside of that, yeah, there's no way for people to really get in and out of crypto without like going back to the US and doing it, or to Europe or to Mexico or to, some other place where there's things like local Monero that with people on it and stuff.
They're not that far from El Salvador.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Where you can go get. Yeah, I was down. I find it interesting, that President Bitcoin is now doing some other things that seem rather authoritarian. That's going to be a very interesting. Be very interesting. One thing about Central America, though, too, is none of these places, people don't realize, none of these places are that far away. I mean,
yeah.
DFW to El Salvador is 3 hours.
Right. It's less than getting to Seattle.
Yeah. So, especially if you're in the southern U.S., it's not that far away at all. But you can go further away. But yeah, it's a big world out there.
Yeah.
Well, Kenny, I definitely think I should check out Rainbow sometime. Probably, maybe.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Since I'm thinking about leaving Texas, I've actually wondered, try to build a network somewhere else. It's hard to say. Who knows? Maybe. As Rainbow might even be a pretty good place to go if you're single. I know of at least one couple who met at Rainbow.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of them that happen there. Yeah, it's such a big crowd and such a much wider net that gets cast than any of the conferences or anything really. Like even Pork Fest or Jackalope Fest, like it's such a like a niche marketing. The tunnel, like that funnel of people that get there are pretty specific. Where Rainbow is like, there's plenty of people that will come and they'll live that anarchist life and they'll have never even heard the term anarchist outside of, somebody mentioning the anarchist cookbook when they were younger or something like that. Like it's,
yeah. And some conferences get too big though, because sometimes I'll go to a conference and then after the conference, it was fine. Oh, you were there. I never saw you. It's like that's kind of a bummer, but when you, but you kind of look, there's so many people to look up, and I hope when the Greater Reset works out, it sounds like Derek and John could get that going. I don't know if I want to go back to, living off the land, but if that's what you want, I think it's definitely something that could work. I do wonder if these things get too big, though, you might draw the attention of the authorities and they might try to put you out of business.
Yep. Yeah. Luckily, it's part of where I think the not getting so financially focused helps too, because when your whole operation is like tens of thousands a year instead of millions, then you're much less of a blip in terms of that stuff. Because that was always the thing with Anarchapulco. After those first couple of years, it was such big amounts of money that they started screwing. At one point the PayPal account got frozen with like $240,000 in it.
Yeah,
like it was.
I just thought of something else. Kenny, have you by chance been to Sharon?
Mm-mm.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Sharon is that.
Sharon, yes. I haven't been there, but I remember, the town that doesn't have
in Michoacan, in the state of Michoacan, that community that basically succeeded from Mexico and threw the cartels out, and it's not an anarchist community, but it's definitely it probably wouldn't be very easy for a gringo to get in there either, but it's definitely a self-contained community where they seem to have taken control of their own, where they're free of the corrupt Mexico government, free of the cartels, and they've got their own little system there. It would be interesting to visit there sometime.
I know a lot of people that have gone and spent time out there. I do know they, I was going to go in 2021, I think, but they went really hardcore, like isolationist with COVID, and they wouldn't let masks and wouldn't let people come out. Which is a thing with so many tribal people, so many natives all across the U.S. too, where like the reservations were some of the most masky lockdown places in the country.
Well, what people forget is the people who initially were promoting the coronavirus. It was people like Molyneux who were, and they wanted to do it to demonize China, to try to create this nativist sentiment that we should throw up walls and close our country off to the rest of the world. I mean, I guess one of the first countries in Europe that actually did that was Switzerland, and Switzerland is generally, a very free country and a very functional country, but Switzerland is also, I get it's easy to visit Switzerland, but it's very, very hard to become a citizen there.
Yeah. They don't want new folks.
Yeah. And then they do have something that works generally, but at the same time, Japan never fell for it too, and Japan's also a very closed society in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I mean, they did close down hardcore. Like you couldn't go into Japan. They didn't lock their people down, but they did do full isolation.
They were very late with that, though. A lot later in other countries. And one thing people told me is that Japan did not want to. They did not want to mess up the Olympics. Was one thing. Also, they were motivated by it. And as somebody told me, said they also don't want to give China a win. And that's if they'd surrendered to this, that would have been like, we're giving China a victory here, because they do not like the Chinese at all. But anyway, yes, that was a good assessment. I don't know what places did stay sane, or what were the saner places. Mexico really was comparatively sane. I mean, you could still go to Mexico if you were an American.
Yep. And folks from Europe were able to come over. Folks from Russia. I mean, I spent a lot of time those couple years, especially like the day the U.S. locked down. I was on a flight to Mexico, to Puerto Vallarta. No one else on the plane. Denver to Puerto Vallarta. It was me and 4 flight attendants and the 2 pilots.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
it was like a $60 flight too.
I am sorry. When I flew to Orlando in July, I'm sorry I did not get photos of that flight. This was a Southwest flight, Austin to Orlando. I think there were 15 of us. I didn't get pictures. Everybody just kind of walked on. No. How did the airline industry survive? Well, they got all kinds of bailouts. Is how they survived. But anyway,
Mexico is mostly pretty calm. There were a few states or cities that kind of went weird. I mean, I know like Belarus was another one that like totally didn't go for it, but then he got killed.
Tanzania was good. I heard Latvia was also pretty good. Sweden,
Latvia. Thailand. I've heard a lot of people had a lot of luck getting in and out of Thailand and staying there and not getting hassled.
Uruguay was actually very good if you lived there, but it wasn't easy to get in and out of it. But it was actually better than a lot, whereas some of the other countries in South America were absolutely horrible.
And if you're in the States, there's so many places in the States. Like Idaho didn't do it at all. Utah didn't do it at all. I mean, Wyoming didn't do it. North and South Dakota, like all the mountain man states, all the country people states didn't play along at all.
So definitely there was definitely differences in America. It really made me wonder about where the differences are. It was a set. I'd like to think maybe that the world hit its bottom then. I hope so. You can't think of a crazier bottom than that, but
Well, and definitely the couple times that they've like tried to bring it back since then, and they've tried to spin the narrative up again. Like back in the fall, they were trying to kind of spin it up again, and they got too much pushback. It seems like, at least for a while, maybe years down the road when people have forgotten it a bit more, they could try again. But it seems like right now people are not going to go for that again.
I don't know.
We'll see. They're trying with bird flu now, so we'll see what happens. I'm guessing people are going to.
They had tried it with other things. I can remember how they scaremongered about AIDS back in the 80s. So, well, it's been good talking to you, Kenny. It's been a very interesting conversation. I knew you'd be an interesting conversation. So it's revolution without
healing.
It's a recipe for it.
Yeah,
there is a whole lot of truth to that.
That's one of Derek Bros' shirts, little plug, theconsciousresistance.com.
Derek has some very interest. Derek is a very unique libertarian. He really has some good. When Derek has some good insights, he really has some good insights. I respect him a lot more than he thinks I do. Because I don't always agree with him, and sometimes I really disagree with him. But I know Derek is fundamentally a good guy.
Awesome. It's great chatting with you, Chris.
It's good chatting with you too. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. Check out my Substack. Thank you. Kenny, is there any place where we can find you on the net or not?
If you go to Linktree/Palurintano, my last name has got, the little bit of it's kind of spread around in a few places. And then if you go to freerossnow.org or freerossnow on Twitter, that's a project that I run. So I'm getting like music and documentaries and a bunch of content made to help push for Ross. And then not just for Rush, we support people pushing for everybody else too. Leonard Peltier and Assange, obviously before he got out, and
also let's just Ian Freeman, Roman Sterling off. I mean, let's just talk about that's what bothers me too. Is I mentioned to one Bitcoin guy that I thought Roman, and he said, "Well, I think Roman might be guilty." I said, "Oh, geez." I mean, Roman Sterling off. And now it's sometimes, just you're risking going to jail just for writing code. So that's something we got to work on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, thank you, Kenny. And have a good day. I'm Chris Baker. We're out.